Prince Albert Victor had it all. He was a grandson of Queen Victoria, next in line to the throne after his father, and full of good looks that drove England wild. However, life wasn't perfect by any means. It was rather tragic and twisted compared to all the other royals. Due to his youthful indiscretions, many scandalous affairs, unknown sicknesses, and most importantly, a secret revealed days after his death that sent his fiancée into an utterly shocking crisis. But we will touch more on this later. Most of us can only dream of a life Prince Albert Victor was born into. In 1864, he came into the world in the royal residence of Frogmore House as the eldest son of Albert, Prince of Wales, and his wife, Princess Alexandra of Denmark. And of course, his grandmother was the Queen Victoria of England. In short, it seemed like Albert was in for a life of comfort and joy, but that's not all of what he got. Even in his own time, Prince Albert Victor was something of an unsettling enigma, since he spent most of his life either in school, the military, or his palace. People in the public barely knew him. Yet, even so, there was a strange energy about him that, as one commenter put it, made people whisper, he will never come to the throne. Well, he never did, and the reason why is tragic. As Prince Albert grew up, he started exhibiting disturbing behaviors. His tutor, John Dalton, couldn't seem to get anywhere with the young boy, and even once called his mind abnormally dormant, especially in comparison to his younger brother George. Now, Albert wasn't the first royal to show little interest in his academic studies, but there were signs something much worse was going on. Although some historians have blamed Arthur's tutor, John Dalton, for being a poor instructor, others believe his schoolboy difficulties stemmed from genetic issues. Some suggest Albert may have suffered from the deafness that also affected his mother, or even small seizures that delayed his intellect, which makes the next part of his life more than a little ironic. To be fair, despite his abysmal school record and a lack of encyclopedic knowledge, Prince Albert Victor had a lot of other things going on for him besides his royal titles. Long-limbed and slim, he was extremely handsome and had absolutely no problem using his good looks to charm people. Like every good little royal, Albert's parents expected him to study at a prestigious college, and he was all set to go to Cambridge. It was a date with destiny. In order to buff up on his subjects, his family selected a new tutor and companion for him, the handsome and sensitive poet James Stephen. To say the relationship was complicated would be an understatement. Now, mentor to mentee relationships can get tangled even at the best of times. But Prince Albert and Stephen took it to the next level. Stephen, a cousin of the writer Virginia Woolf, suffered from a bipolar disorder that ran through their family and was often in a mentally fragile state. Meanwhile, although Prince Albert Victor was ostensibly Stephen's student, he was also his beautiful boss. To this day, no one can for sure say what went on behind those closed study room doors, but historians have a few scandalous ideas. Stephen was clearly emotionally attached to Prince Albert, and some experts even suggest he harbored intimate feelings toward the prince, which the royal heir may have even returned. Still, that doesn't mean it was an idyllic relationship. If Stephen nursed a crush on the young prince, he also had harsh words for him. By the time Prince Albert was supposed to head to Cambridge, even his devoted tutor despaired of his book smarts, once saying, "I do not think he can possibly derive much benefit from attending lectures at Cambridge. He hardly knows the meaning of the words to read." Despite Stephen's doubts, Prince Albert and his entourage went to Cambridge anyways, and he received a shocking education. Sure, the prince floundered in his studies like everyone predicted, but he proved very successful in society, Prince Albert Victor's college years were shrouded in some mystery, with many historians bemoaning how little information we have about his personal life at that time. So much so that some claim he spent years completely chaste. Except, well, there might be a scandalous reason for that lack of dirt. He had something to hide. Although there's evidence that Prince Albert enjoyed the company of a hot male tutor or two, he also wasn't immune to female wiles. It's just that he had horrible luck when it came to women. In 1889, the royal family started looking for potential brides for their son, and landed on Prince Albert's sweet, beautiful cousin, Princess Alex. This did not go in the way they expected though. Although Prince Albert got some warm, fluttery feelings when he thought about his pretty cousin, her response was ice cold. Despite the fact that Albert was poised to be the King of England one day, Princess Alex didn't share his crush and turned down his offer of engagement flat. Then again, maybe she had another reason to reject him. In 1889, one of the most infamous scandals England had ever seen broke out, and Prince Albert was right in the middle of it all. That summer, officers raided a male night house in Cleveland Street, and the workers inside named one of Prince Albert's equerries as a regular client. After that, it wasn't long before society whispered that the prince was also a regular visitor. Not a good look for the prince at all. But then it really started to blow up. The whispers caught on like wildfire, and soon the Cleveland Street scandal became a matter of national concern. Citizens inundated Prince Albert's parents with anonymous, frantic letters decrying their son possible for the role in all of this mess. And authorities even started to notice all of these accusations until suddenly the prince got a suspicious break. That December, with the scandal still raging on, Prince Albert's family showed their power in a disturbing way. His father completely shut down the entire Cleveland Street investigation, forcing the prosecutors to drop their cases on all the house's clients and leaving all of the claims against Prince Albert up in the air. Whether or not the rumors were true, Prince Albert was simply not able to stop getting in trouble. While on a planned tour in British India, Prince Albert Victor met and struck up an affair with a married woman, Marjorie Haddon, the wife of a civil engineer in India. However, this fling came back to haunt him. Years later, Marjorie traveled to England and claimed that she had given birth to Albert's son. Although this was almost certainly untrue, it did force the prince's lawyers to admit he had some relations with the woman, tarnishing his name even further. The thing is, Albert's bedroom life was just getting started. By 1890, Prince Albert was back in England and had been around the block when it came to scandalous affairs. No wonder when he tried to settle down and make an honest man of himself, he started a romantic flirtation with Princess Helene. Helene was beautiful, had a great pedigree, and best of all, she actually returned his feelings. Yet there was a huge problem. Unfortunately for Prince Albert, Princess Helene was Roman Catholic. While this may not seem like a huge deal today, it was definitely a big deal back then. The British royal family was Protestant, and many of Albert's relations would be aghast at the thought of him entertaining the possibility of loving a Catholic. But Albert and Helene were young, in love, and willing to do anything for passion, so they came up with a darling plan. In order to sidestep their religion issue, Helene offered to convert, and everything seemed like it was going to end up okay in the end. Prince Albert's parents were on board, and even wrote to his brother confessing, "You have no idea how I love this sweet girl now, and I feel I could never be happy without her." But then it took a tragic turn. Helene's Catholic father refused to allow Helene to leave the faith. Of course, this just pushed the couple to even more desperate measures. These two crazy kids were so frantic to marry each other, they didn't take no for an answer. Princess Helene went over her father's head and went right to the top, securing an audience with Pope Leo XIII to beg him to let her convert. Sadly, the Holy Father was on Team Dad too, and told her he would never condone her change in faith or her marriage. That was very much the end of that. Once more, Prince Albert's dream of happiness went right out the window. In 1890, Prince Albert Victor started suffering from a mysterious but powerful illness, and a series of doctors tried to treat him around the clock for something they variously named a fever. However, historians think there might have been a different culprit behind his sickness, yet another bout of venereal disease. Around this time, seedy scandals struck again. In the late months of 1891, people started gossiping that the young prince was having yet another affair. Even more scandalously, the apple of his eye was reportedly none other than the commoner chorus girl, Lydia Miller. Now this rumor only got worse as the weeks went on and took an incredibly dark turn. Short after igniting their affair, Prince Albert and Lydia crashed and burned in one tragic end. Poor Lydia took her own life. Although not directly related to their fling, the fateful event immediately triggered an inquest into her demise. And once more, Prince Albert was right in the center. With the court looking into Lydia's fate, Buckingham Palace worked overtime trying to cover up yet another one of Albert's youthful indiscretions. Many people believed that the royal family set up Lord Charles to take the fall as Lydia's sole lover, taking the heat off their precious son in the meantime. They all say publicity is good publicity, but the royal family would majorly disagree with that statement. Despite the palace's best efforts, everybody who was anybody knew about Prince Albert's involvement with the death of Lydia. Prince Albert was quickly becoming the bad boy of Victorian England, and he and the rest of the royal family needed to come up with a Hail Mary idea fast. Their solution: try his hand again at marriage to distract the public with a royal wedding. Prince Albert and Mary had a whirlwind courtship, even by royal standards. Even though Albert was supposed to be England's most eligible bachelor, he was also dragging a lot of baggage behind him. So before the year of 1891 was up, Albert proposed, surprising Mary out of her socks. Yet even in that moment, he was hiding a huge secret. The sensible, sweet Mary was extremely excited to wed the prince, except she didn't exactly know all of the information. Earlier that year, Prince Albert had written to Lady Sybil and proclaimed that he was in love again. Although he didn't say with whom, his next letter made it very clear. Prince Albert Victor apparently couldn't play coy to save his life, because chances are the person he was in love with was Lady Sybil herself. In his next letter, a week later, he casually mentions, "I wonder if you really love me a little. I should be very pleased if you did, just a little bit." Despite Prince Albert's shady dealings with his private messages, the royal set a date for his wedding just months away, on February 27th, 1892. With such a short time frame to plan such a big event, the palace were likely rushing to get everything sorted out. Yet just 6 weeks after Prince Albert and Mary's betrothal, a catastrophic event occurred. In the late 1800s, an influenza epidemic was sweeping through Europe, and Prince Albert got supremely and tragically unlucky. In January of 1892, just over a month before he was due to wed Mary, the young royal developed a horrific case of pneumonia. For days, he struggled to survive, and his family was trying to help him around the clock. In the end, even though the prince was healthy and was only 28 years old, the writing was on the wall. his family crowded around his bed, praying for his recovery at first, but then praying for his soul. Eventually, Prince Albert succumbed to his illness, passing in Sandringham House on January 14th, 1892. Except when it came to his dark twist, that's just the beginning. As it turns out, the deceased Prince Albert left a wake of destruction and tragedy that rivaled any of the scandals he made when he was alive. Firstly, the entire nation was shell-shocked that he was really gone, and shops closed their windows and doors in mourning. Yet inside the royal family, things were even darker. Prince Albert Victor had always been close to his mother Alexandra, and her reaction to this passing was harrowing. She never got over the loss of her eldest son. But compared to other mourners, Alexandra got off incredibly easy. Remember Prince Albert's teenage tutor, the romantic James Stephen? Well, he sure didn't forget about Prince Albert, and that wasn't a good thing. See, just after he had completed his duties as a tutor, Stephen suffered a traumatic head injury that left him more mentally imbalanced than before. So when Stephen heard of the prince's passing, he did not respond well. From the moment Prince Albert passed, Stephen committed himself to one disturbing act, perhaps suffering from a psychotic break and not helped by his emotions for the fallen prince. Stephen refused every single bit of food from the day of Prince Albert's passing onward. 20 days later, Stephen found himself dead of forced starvation. And then there was Albert's bride. Throughout his total and complete chaos, poor Mary's life had unraveled before her eyes. Well, one day she was planning her fairy tale royal wedding, now she was planning her fiance's funeral. She was utterly heartbroken, having the loss of both a husband and a potential crown, and she came up with a heartbreaking tribute. Prince Albert Victor got a funeral deserving of the eldest son of the British royal family. As his attendants laid his body to rest, Mary made sure to put a bouquet of orange blossoms on the coffin as it lowered into the ground. This was actually an incredibly touching gesture. The bouquet just so happened to be her bridal wreath. The truth is, everyone lost their minds when it came to Prince Albert dying. You don't get much darker than Albert's legacy. Although his family covered up so many of his secrets, in death, his scandals came right back into the light. And remember, there were so many of them. By 1964, one biographer called his end a merciful act of providence, because it allowed the more responsible King George V to reign. But some storm clouds still lingered on. Although historians have worked hard to rehabilitate Prince Albert's image today, he can never seem to shake off all of the controversies he started. To this day, conspiracy theories abound that Albert actually succumbed to that venereal disease, or even more absurdly, that the politician Lord Churchill had him shoved off a cliff to remove him from succession. Believe it or not, the biggest blow to Prince Albert Victor's legacy came from inside his own family. When he succumbed to his illness, the rights of succession naturally passed to his younger brother George, who eventually became King George V. But that wasn't all George took from him. Just a year after his brother's passing, George also wed Mary. Yep, he took Albert's bride from his cold, dead hands. In the days following Prince Albert Victor's passing, his sisters revealed his deepest secret. Instead of lavishing Mary with sympathies, Princess Maud and Louise made it very clear that they thought Princess Helene was Albert's one true love and the most deserving of their empathy. And then Albert sent poor Mary a cruel message beyond the grave. Maud and Louise later told Princess Helene that Albert Victor was yours in death because he is buried with your little coin around his neck. It was practically the eve of Albert's wedding, and he was still wearing his ex-girlfriend's keepsake. Don't forget, if you've enjoyed this story or stories alike, make sure to show some love by subscribing and liking this video. Stay tuned for some more informative and exciting stories like this one.